Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Cinema d'Amore. I'm your host, Chuck, joined by
Justin.
Like we said, we're moving into war movies. We had some Godzilla there. We sandwiched that in between romance and war. Put it where it fits, right in between there. We did
and
the
we're
romance,
also
and
very much in the same war with this movie.
yeah, in the same
territory,
the same area in general. Yeah, it's the same. It's not that far away. Yeah, we're doing the thin red line, not to be confused with the thin blue line that we did earlier this year. It's a lot of thin lines out there.
Yes,
and this is we do have to make sure to warn the viewers, if you do watch this film somewhere, Terrence Malick, the director, says you have to watch it loud. It's a specific instruction.
Yeah. The only movie that I've ever seen say that as a part of the movie is The Last Waltz, but the Criterion specifically said when I clicked play that this movie was meant to be played loud, per Terrence Malick.
Which I do enjoy that. Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's a really hard movie to be like, it's meant to be played loud, because it doesn't start loud. So you don't know if you have it too loud or not. But if you have surround sound, most war movies are fucking excellent with it. I feel like this one kind of missed the. It's just like a few years too early to have like really, really great surround sound. Like something like Saving Private Ryan was probably like the first war movie to like really feel like bullets.
That was the same year, man. You're
saying
it's too early. It's the same year.
Oh,
Saving Private Ryan came out earlier, actually.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I had this in surround sound. I had it full blast, and it was immersive. It's immersive immediately when you have shit behind you, but it didn't have that.
It's different too, because it's not. He says play it loud, but as with most Terrence Malick films, the action isn't always even like near the camera. It's sometimes very far away from the camera, because that's what he's shooting. He's shooting a guy in the grass, but the bullets and the bombs are going off 100 yards away.
I mean, there's shots too where like the perspective of the camera gets blown up. So
yeah, so I think it's also just a difference of, not that the sound design's bad or that they didn't have the things of Saving Private Ryan, but Saving Private Ryan's always in the direct middle of the conflict at all times. It's more, I would say these are both, because they came out in the same year, they are both a good kind of pair of movies to watch side by side, because they're two very, I would almost say completely opposite ideas of a war movie for World War II. Spielberg is the more straightforward, more kind of standard dramatic fare type of war movie.
Now.
He's also in Europe instead, so they're also good like opposites there. They both do not open with, because this one takes a little bit to get into it, a little bit longer, but they both have beach landings where they start off with, because they're moving on to a different place from the aircraft carriers and battleships. So they have a lot of parallels.
Very different beach landings
between them. Yeah. Very. They're the one in this movie much less hassled and deadly.
I would say that from Saving Private Ryan on, and when I say on, we're getting Band of Brothers, The Pacific, Masters of the Air. That formula is kind of stuck, and I feel like it didn't. He solidified it in Saving Private Ryan, and it's kind of been like the standard for war movies now. Not saying that like other movies weren't or aren't like it. Obviously, this is not like it, because Terrence Malick is like a very weird choice to do a war movie. It's very much a Terrence Malick war movie. This is probably the movie that really, Days of Heaven is very similar in its setup. Badlands is his first movie, and probably the only movie that's
the most like straightforward of all of them.
Yeah, it doesn't really. It's a good movie, but it doesn't feel like it doesn't really feel like a Terrence Malick movie at all. And maybe the most Terrence Malick movie would be something like Tree of Life. Like that's the epitome of of Terrence Malick.
Yeah.
What is your favorite war movie? I guess since we're starting about war, I just kind of want to get an idea of where you're. What are your favorites?
This is a good one. We're probably going to talk. I think my favorite war movie is probably the next one we're going to talk about. Actually,
oh really?
Which I'll just say it's Black Hawk Down. I really do love that movie.
Secrets from everybody.
That movie is. These are both also there's very much similarities between this and Black Hawk Down, and they are ridiculous ensemble movies that have so many people in them that every time someone turns around, you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, that guy's in this movie. And it's like, especially a lot of people in both these movies that weren't famous at all when they filmed these, that it wasn't until years later that anyone knew what their names were. But I really enjoy both those movies. They're, again, very, very different takes on war movies, but I enjoy both of those. I like war movies, but it's not, I don't want to say it's my least favorite genre, but it's not one I would say I super get into. And I feel like it is because so many of them can start to feel the same. Like I said, a lot of them, everything after Saving Private Ryan, a lot of it feels too much like Saving Private Ryan. And almost anything before that still has that feeling of like every John Wayne war movie you've ever seen. I like some of the odd ones, like something like whether it's The Dirty Dozen or Kelly's Heroes or something like that. Something that's a little bit more kind of out there for a war movie or leans more into like maybe comedy of something like that.
Comedy war movies.
Comedy, yeah,
Tropic
because
Thunder.
nothing's funnier than war.
I do like Apocalypse Now a lot,
Yeah.
and the Vietnam War movies are very different from like the World War II ones, because this one almost feels like the Vietnam War movie, where like the whole thing just feels like a huge clusterfuck. Or like, you want to talk about comedies? I mean, it is more or less a war movie, but
Doctor Strangelove.
Doctor Doctor Strangelove. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is a very similar to Doctor Strangelove. It's just not funny. They're like, what if we made Doctor Strangelove on the ground, but it wasn't funny? And Terrence Malick is like, hasn't made a movie in 20 years at this point. It's like, I'll do it. Sign me up. I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, and more recently, we've had other directors trying to do different things with war movies. 1917 is a good example of doing something very unique and interesting with that, using the war as more of a setting to just tell a very specific story of soldiers trying to find one guy and track him down on the battlefront. So I like something like that that tries to do something unique. Dunkirk, I would say, is a good war movie that's not specifically not is a again getting into that very niche of one very specific place in an overall battle that pretty much the rest of the war is not concerned with. It's just these specific guys on this beach trying to get rescued.
Yeah, Nolan plays with time in that, so just that alone makes his film a little bit more interesting or different.
Yeah, maybe one of the last movies he had with some good sound. I feel like you could actually hear it. It wasn't like Tenet at all.
Oppenheimer was good too.
Yeah.
He's I don't know if he's listening to more people now.
Yeah. It's like, speaking of sound, there's another director that maybe has some odd sounds for movies.
I mean, Tenet, I think, is a good experiment, but I don't. Yeah, more than anything, it's not the plot that bothers me. It's the fact that it's like, why can't we hear these people? Like, what? Like, I get realism, but when people are like wearing masks on their face and muffled, it's like, I don't fucking know. Or give me subtitles. Like, I watch what is it? This 600 pound life,
Mhm.
and Dr. Now comes in and they fucking subtitle him. I can understand him. They subtitle him. So Nolan should just automatically have subtitles for his hard to hear
Yeah,
characters.
just treat him like a foreign film at this
Yeah.
point.
I
Just
always do
subtitle
love when they
everything.
put subtitles on somebody that's not that hard to hear,
Yeah,
but Nolan, you need them. You definitely do. I don't know, like war films I guess can be so different because of the type of setting that they're in. Obviously, our previous host that we've had, James, he's always brought up how like he doesn't like war movies because the message is always the same, the war is bad. And I feel like that's an oversimplification. That's just like, well, you lose a lot from the movies when you get in, that aspect of it. And The Thin Red Line is very much that movie, but it's also like Malick likes to be like, look how beautiful everything is. Why are we doing that? It's not just
yeah.
like it's a horrific experience, but it's like, I mean, like the
And
movie
he,
opens and it's nice and beautiful and everything's peaceful, and then that naval ship shows up and it's just all this smog that's going up in the air, like polluting the air, and it's just sort of like that's like his first message is like
yeah,
just
it's
being
loud.
just
It's like it's the
existing.
machinery's overwhelming everything. Yeah,
Yep.
it's. I feel like I know what you're saying. Like it's definitely an anti-war movie, and I feel like yeah, I would agree. All war movies probably after maybe like the 50s or 60s are anti-war movies, whereas very much the movies in the 40s and 50s with like John Wayne and James Stewart were very much no, war is good, war is necessary. We had to have that war to save the world.
Right.
Like they very much were still in that the propaganda era, and I mean even the early films of Akira Kurosawa, he has that propaganda films that were like about Japanese factory workers that they had to support the war effort by building, making binoculars and stuff like that. But yeah, everything
And
everything is a
Malick's
lot of
very
it.
much aware of that.
Yeah.
Very much
That,
aware of it because he literally has that. They bring it up so many times where somebody's like, "I'm gonna commend you for this medal," and they're like, "The fuck you are!" Like they
yeah.
don't want it. They
For what? They don't necessarily, yeah, they don't want that recognition. And I think yeah, he gets into a little bit more specific. It isn't so much that war is bad. He gets more into the specifics of these characters experiencing why the war is bad because it's different for everyone. It's not everyone doesn't have the exact same experience of oh, my friend got killed or this happened. There's the one guy that shoots that guy and they play like his internal monologue and it's just like
Mhm.
I've killed a man. Like that's the worst thing you could ever do. But like externally, he's yelling like, "Oh, I killed him. That was great." But in his mind, he keeps going, I can't believe I just killed that guy. Like that's worse than rape. You can't do
Mhm.
that. Like, but I killed that guy."
Yeah, and that character's probably the most scared character out of all of them. Like, or maybe it's just his face, but he's always just like
Yeah,
petrified at every given moment. Also, the way that they're like pushing, the way they push this specific battle is that this island isn't even important. It's just going to give Nick Nolte like a star or possibly lead him into like a general ranking or something that, like another star for like he's been eating shit, he says, for so long that like he's got to do it, but he puts everybody's life at risk to the point that like it is like almost all these people are like, this is insane, where it's like I can't see, or like a good example that contradicts what you just had where the guy shot somebody is the scene with our favorite Jared Leto,
yeah,
and he sends the two guys ahead knowing that they're pretty much going to die, and they do, they're taken out within like a second. And that shot, which I love Terrence Malick, it's like it doesn't matter if you're a good actor or not, when they show your face for like a fucking solid minute, it just kind of conveys like despair, all that guilt that's come in with that. And I think that's the nice thing about this movie, and the reason why, because you said they jump around between so many characters, is that this guy's gonna have to deal with that for the rest of his fucking life. What is he gonna do? How's he gonna justify it? Malik has all these questions, and then he's like, moving on. Next example.
yeah. Next character, yeah. Let's go see what Woody Harrelson's doing.
Yeah.
So he's like
Woody
the
Harrelson probably
the
has the
super
most
gung
memorable
ho.
moment.
Yeah, he's the one that's like, we have to just follow orders. We have to take it. We have to do what we need to do. But that moment is great when he goes to pull that grenade and you see his hand come away with just the pin. And he's like, "Oh shit!" And just falls back. And he's like, "What a rookie move! Can't believe I grabbed it by the pin."
Yeah, like, I'm a dumbass. And they try to, I like when they try to comfort people. They're like, no, you're a hero because you could have blew us all up, but we saw what you did. You
Yeah, you only
you
blew
dove on
yourself
it.
up.
You protected us from the grenade that you blew up. That's very
Yeah,
commendable.
but everyone has to argue about who's gonna. He's like, "You got to let my wife know I loved her," and they're like, "Are you gonna write a letter to his wife?" No, I don't know. I don't know his wife.
I don't know
He
his
asked
wife and I
you.
can't write.
Yeah, I can't write. Well, he asked you. Well, you do it then. Yeah, they keep going back and forth about who's
But
who's gonna
yeah, and then
write
he
his
like
wife.
blatantly says it was just to comfort him. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah,
Oh god.
yeah. There are a lot of good characters. Sometimes it is there'll just be narration, and there are multiple times where I'm just like, who's talking? Because sometimes the camera won't be on the person that's actually the one talking, and I'm like, is that Jim Caviezel talking now? Like only some voices are distinct enough, like Nick Nolte or Sean Penn, that you're like, oh, okay, that's who's talking now. And then other times
Then
I'm just
some
like,
narrations
I
are
don't know
just a
which one it
random
is.
person that you saw hours ago that
Yeah, they're not.
that you don't even know them.
Well, I know he
They're
had had Billy Bob Thornton, I think, was going to narrate the entire film, and he scrapped that. I know
I
that's
like
like
the
one of the
individual ones.
behind the scenes like thing that he was going to have him narrate the whole film, which I feel like would have been odd. And Billy Bob Thornton does have a very distinctive voice that I feel like would have been distracting if he's not a character in the movie and he's just narrating everyone's thoughts.
There's a
Why
weird
did
voiceover moment too, narration moment too, where the person's talking and then another narrator starts talking to them. So it's like a conversation that they're having. So it's like,
I I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like that was he probably just lifted audio from a deleted scene of two characters talking and was like, "Fuck it, I'll just use it as narration."
yeah, or that scene that you're talking about the guy that ended up killing somebody, and he's like, "I did it," and his voiceover contradicts it. His voiceover sounds exactly the same as his actual voice. That
Yeah, yeah.
if you looked away for a second, you might think he was literally just
He
said
was
that out
talking to
loud.
himself. Yeah, yeah. Again, we get great cameos of people that some like Jared Leto. I don't think has a single line, or maybe just says the one like "Hey, move up" or something like that. He has zero lines. Adrian Brody has maybe one line in this entire film. John C.
He is
Riley, I
just
don't think
look
has a single
scared and
line.
eavesdrop.
Yeah, John C. Riley's
Fife.
in the background every once in a while.
He's the scariest person, I think.
He's just hanging out there always.
Well, well, first of all, I think our brains have been warped a little bit by all the John C. Reilly comedies. So you're like, oh, I like seeing him. But then at the end, when he's talking to Sean Penn and he's like, I don't care about it. I don't care about anything. And he's just like so dark. I'm like, Jesus Christ, why they gave John C. Reilly like the darkest
The most
moment.
depressing dialogues.
But I mean, he wasn't huge comedy. I mean, like he did, I think he was in Hard Eight
He's in Hard Eight, yeah.
before
That was
this.
what his early stuff, yeah.
So and then he was doing Boogie Nights around the same time as this, and there's funny moments, but he's a comedic actor. Like you think of him from Adult
Step
Swim and all that
Brothers.
stupid shit.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But yeah.
that's and like I don't know, and like the weirdest ones probably, and you got a lot of TV actors and stuff in here too that you'll recognize from TV shows, and
Yeah.
mixed in with these big actors. But the one thing that you get whenever you listen to any of these actors talk about Thin Red Line, they have no idea what the
See?
fuck they were doing. They're like, they've had entire scenes cut. They're like, I'm in the movie for 1 second, and I just like it's
A bunch of them
John
got cut
Cusack comes out,
entirely. I
says,
mean, Mickey Rourke. Mickey
yeah,
Rourke was supposed to be in the movie. He's completely cut. Can't think of who. I know him. I think Lucas Haas was another one that was supposed to be in the movie. He's completely cut. Adrian Brody said that again. I almost wonder how much they shot because Adrian Brody, according to him, was like, I thought I was the main character of this entire film for how much I had. He's like, and then I'm only on screen for 6 minutes. Like, so I don't know. I don't know how much stuff they shot with him that got cut, but he was under the impression that he was like the main character of this movie.
I mean, I'd say the main character is
It's Jim Caviezel.
well, if
It's
you're gonna
it's a
pick an
little bit
act,
half and half, but I feel like he's almost the main character for the first half. Then it transitions to the other guy Bell, and then it like
yeah.
kind of switches more back to Jim Caviezel at the very end.
Well, I was gonna even say with Malik, I mean, like script wise, yeah, Caviezel has the most screen time and probably the most shit going on with him besides Bell.
Yeah.
Bell's like the only character that you really get, kind of like their backstory. But I was gonna say Malik's very much like nature is the protagonist. He's very humanist. Like he cares about people. He cares about the spirituality, but like on an individual level, like he does not have a lot of interest in these people. Like you don't get anything that really develops them besides what they do in the heat of the moment, and that's all you get. Like and I guess that's kind of how it is for most people in war. You do all this training for years, you go over there, and it's like what you do in 1 second kind of defines your whole military career, as if you were like a brave person, if you were a compassionate person, were you a career person. But yeah, even like he's so weird. Like I definitely think this has to be the movie that Mel Gibson saw and was like,
Oh
that's
yeah,
Jesus Christ right there,
for
because
sure. Yeah.
has this Jesus Christ vibe like the whole time, where he's just he doesn't seem like a person. He seems like he was just put there to like touch and change lives, and that was that. Like
Yeah. He's
he's
like the only one that's always talking about Like he keeps telling Sean Penn, because when we first start the movie, yeah, he went AWOL with another soldier, and they're like on this random island
Yeah.
that they got to, and then they get picked up and found, and like Sean Penn's like, why do you keep running away? Like, what's your deal? Like, why can't you just follow the rules and be with the rest of the group? And he's the only one that's always talking about, well, I don't even feel like Earth is what I'm meant to be here for. Like, all I want to know is that there's some type of heaven that I'll go to. And
Yeah.
he's the only other character that we get any outside reference from the war. He talks about his like that he lived on a farm, and they have like that kind of scene where it's, I think he's with his mother and his sister, and he's like watching her die, and he's like, but I don't know, like, did she actually go to heaven? Did she go anywhere, or did she just die? And he seems like always be there to comfort people that are dying. Like he's almost trying to be like, come on, man, you got to tell me there's something. Like, tell me you're seeing something. I got to know that if I die in this war, there's something after. Like, it can't just be that I'm
Even
gonna
the
die and nothing
Japanese,
happens.
it's like a
Yeah,
cold stare of Jim Caviezel. Like, I mean, if I just got shot, it'd be really fucking weird to have Jim Caviezel just walk up to you, like, you've never seen this guy in your life, and he's like, I'm just gonna stare into your face until you die. Like, but
yeah. So
even even early on when he has that first little, we'll just call it fight argument, it actually goes pretty well for somebody that's been AWOL several times, but his buddy that's like, oh, he hates you, and like the most Christ-like thing you can do is he's like, I don't think he hates. I don't feel that. I don't hate him, so I don't see how he could hate me. And I'm like, that's like the most, like, that sounds, it really does sound like something out of the Bible. It really does. It's like one of those stories. And he more or less does kind of like get to, he gets into Sean Penn's like soul, like, or whatever you want to call it. Like he bothers him to a degree. Like, it really gets to him by the end of the film.
yeah, he has a good story, and then yeah, maybe he dies at the end. He sacrifices himself so that the rest of them can make it out. He saves the rest of his platoon or group, but still, maybe the person with like the most depressing story is probably Bell, because he is the one that we see. I mean, there's so much of that movie where he keeps thinking like, oh, if only I can go back to my wife. Like, that's the only reason I'm trying to get out of here. I'm trying to just make it through. And he has those flashbacks forever that definitely make me think of, again, to bring like someone like Scorsese or something, they make me think of the flashbacks from like Shutter Island or something, like the way he keeps viewing his wife in like this perfect idyllic world, and he just can't imagine how he's like, I just got to get back to that. Why can't I get back to that
Yeah.
life? And then when he
It's
gets
the only shots
that
that
letter,
aren't shot like realistic. They're shot like it's
yeah,
a
he
memory
flips
or
the camera
something.
upside down. Yeah, they're all
Hell yeah.
the lighting's in like either like way overblown or something. It's overexposed, and yeah, they all seem like it's definitely meant to make you feel like this isn't real, and maybe he's overestimating how much their relationship means, because yeah, he finally gets that letter that's like, hey, I met an Air Force captain. We're gonna have to get divorced because I don't love you anymore. You've been gone too long.
In context, like, I don't know if people listening haven't rewatched the movie. It's like a fucking 3-minute scene of her. That's like the only dialogue that she gets.
Yeah,
He reads the whole fucking letter in pretty much real time. They stay on him for the whole 3 minutes, but they do intercut to her just like, I don't know, sitting around being in bed. And
those scenes are like, they look more, they're similar to his memories, but they're all with her. She's not happy in these shots. She's cold and distant in all these shots, and it's like it's the realization setting in of like, oh, maybe she was more upset that I was leaving than I thought she was. Like, maybe
I thought like
I thought she was fine.
oh, I was gonna say, I thought that it was like she was gonna roll over in bed, and like the dream state, it looks like it's gonna be Belle, but in reality, it's already like that Air Force captain. Also, we don't
Yeah,
know when she wrote this letter because they had to wait till they got back out of the battlefield, and I'm not 100% sure how much time has passed for that letter to get to him and how much they've been holding on to it. But yeah, that's like a huge blow. That's probably worse than what some other people have gone through. Like, maybe that, see, it's all existential questions with Malik.
it's almost, maybe it would have been better if he would have died in Jim Caviezel's place, because he's pretty. I don't think he wanted to read that letter. He might have rather been the one to die there.
Yeah, and it's implied that Jim Caviezel was in a good place when he died. He doesn't necessarily like he shows shots of that island, that African island that he was like happy with all these people where he says he was the most happy. So he implies that he's at least at peace. But this isn't like as crazy as Tree of Life, where Tree of Life is literally like there's shots from the afterlife and everything mixed into that
There's shots
movie.
from prehistoric Earth.
Yeah, let's go back to the creation of Earth.
Yeah,
Let's
it's
let's
a
have
little
some
bit bigger there.
dinosaurs in there. Let's
Yeah,
put some trauma in there, and having like a borderline abusive father played by Brad Pitt. And hey, this movie where you're talking about the cast, almost, if maybe not the entire cast of Oh Brother Where Art Thou.
yeah,
I don't know if John Turturro is in this movie, but I can't
yeah.
roll
Maybe he
out that
was
he
cut
wasn't in this
somewhere.
movie. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't say that he wasn't.
yeah. I forgot about both of them being in there. George Clooney and Tim Blake Nelson. Tim in another like tiny cameo, basically. Like George Clooney's literally on screen for the last minute of the film. He's the final. He's like the final character you see at the very end. It's such a weird place for him to come in. But I know
Yeah, he's like the new career military guy,
he's the
so
next. Yeah, he's the next guy taking over, and
he's
which
just there so Sean Penn can have his monologue of like, God damn it, these people.
yeah, they just keep coming.
I think though another thing with this movie, because it goes through it's almost a 3-hour movie. It goes through so many different characters that when you're watching the movie, you're like, oh shit, I forgot they were in the movie. But then by the time you get to the end of the movie, you've already forgotten that you saw them in that movie. I mean, and that scene with Elias Koteas, or however you say his name, Casey Jones, Nick Nolte, where he's like, go take the island, and he's like, I refuse. That's a very bad idea. We should go around. Nick Nolte's like, don't be a coward. I like that Nick Nolte's boss was like John Travolta. John Travolta was maybe I know I'm jumping around. I'm just a side note. John Travolta it felt very weird in this movie to me. He's the
He
only
felt
one
like
that felt
he feels like the most out of place from of any of the people in this film. I
his
mean, him and maybe
character just
George
doesn't
Clooney are the two.
his character just doesn't seem like it belongs. Like he's so over the top when he's talking to Nick Nolte, and I'm like, how is that guy his boss? But going back to the Elias Koteas thing, like I
I mean,
liked that scene a
maybe you
lot.
could say like that's the idea is because it kind of fits in with Nick Nolte's thing about like
Eating shit.
basically being like, yeah, I got to take shit from guys like John Travolta because I can't remember his character's name, but I
It's
got to take
funny when
shit
you
from
say it that way.
guys like John Travolta, and he's like, and he almost kind of like gives him like it's like a very backhanded compliment. He's like, oh man, it's good to see guys your age still in the war. Most of them would have retired by now. That's real cool that you want to stick around and be with the soldiers. Like, kind of is like, wow, you old fuck. Like, I can't believe you're still here.
And another good thing that it points out too, verbally from Nick Nolte, like he literally says it, is he's like in his 50s or something, and he's been in the military for years, and this is also his first war. Like this is his war.
It's probably like the timing of like he was probably like would have been like too young at the time that like World War I happened to ever be remotely involved, and like he's just at that age where he's almost too old to be in World War II. Like he's like it's like if it doesn't happen now, it'll never happen.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also it's good commentary to be like, some of these people, it's not like they've been in war after war after war. This guy literally falls right in the middle where it's like, this is his first war and probably his last war. Like, he wouldn't, whether he lives or dies in this moment, there's no more wars for him after this. He's just too fucking old. So he wants, like, they even make a comment about becoming political afterwards. And that's really where, like, the generals tend to make themselves a name for themselves. But there's a human element to him, but he probably has like less than most people. Because he just likes the push, and that scene with Elias Koteas is so good because he's like refusing, and he doesn't want to straight up be like, that's insubordination. Like he's saying it, but he's like, I'm gonna have to come check it out for myself. But if you're lying to me, but it's like also I think it kind of mirrors that scene with Jared Leto sending those people ahead, knowing that they're gonna get killed, and they were killed on his order. Yeah, that's something dark. You could have some of these decorated generals in real life, and yeah, they probably been through similar situations where it's like they got there and there were a few sacrifices, and like this movie, maybe they weren't necessary sacrifices. Malick's also very good at humanizing the Japanese. I mean, at first, you like probably what 2 hours of the movie, you don't get really any interaction with them. He doesn't, I think, ever show. He doesn't subtitle them for what they say, so you're very much with the Americans of not understanding them unless they speak English. It was a little funny though when they were yelling at each other from like when they were still in the bunker before the Americans like kind of took over. Where they're, I can't remember how he's like, "You eat shit, American." He's just like, "No, you eat shit." That's probably the only comedy that's in this movie, because even Woody Harrelson blowing up his ass, like, it wasn't that. It was irony more than it was funny. But
Yeah.
I do like, no, you eat shit. Just like how many times they're asking for water, and Nick Nolte's just like, "You don't need water. If they pass out, they pass out." It's like, dude, that's not good. Like, people die from that.
Yeah,
A lot
get
of
the water.
insubordination.
It's all around, yeah.
Rightfully so, yeah. And you got him and John Cusack and a few other people that stand up. And I do like that moment later where they're like, with Elias, where they're like, "Thank you so much for sticking up for us and trying to, like, at least strategize and be there for us." So he's like the ideal leader, and Nick Nolte is not. I don't feel like we see a lot of Nick Nolte anymore.
Yeah,
He's
I'm
probably
like,
like
was this like before or after he had those like DUIs and was going through a lot of stuff? Like, I'm not sure. I don't remember the timeline. Like, is this before or after that?
I think we had the DUIs were like after, when, because I remember when Hulk was coming out. I think it had just come out when he had his like his big DUI. So like it came out alongside the movie.
Yeah,
Him in his like Hawaiian shirt, looking all disheveled and shit.
yeah. One of the most memorable mug shots of all time.
But yeah, the entire cast in this is great. I think they're all utilized very well, even though they don't have the screen time. And I understand that actors, like, they want to be like, they probably want to be the main character, let alone be confused like Adrian Brody and think they were the main character.
Yeah, which and that's like another interesting thing. He is another one of those directors that people want to sign up just because it's his name on it. Which, for being, this would have only been his third movie at that point, because he did Badlands, Days of Heaven, and then quit and went to France for 20 years. So the fact that even just off of those two movies there were people that are like, "I'll sign up." I think it was like Sean Penn or something was one that was like, "I'm not even going to read the script. Like, you just tell me where I need to fly to, and I'll be there. Like, I don't even care. I
He's
just
so
want to be
elusive
on."
too. Like, people didn't even know what he fucking looked like.
Yeah,
There's like
for the
one
longest
picture of
time
him.
there was that one picture of him in like a safari hat or something. It looked like a Bigfoot picture. It was so blurry. It's like, that's Terrence Malick.
Yeah,
Is
Bigfoot.
it?
Well, when he came back and he did this, like, his stuff's more spaced out, but I don't know if my timeline's right, but I think the New World's right after this, and then
Yeah, New World is like 2004 or something like that. 03, 04 maybe.
then maybe like Tree of Life, and then he started making making a couple movies very quickly. Some of them, like, I have To the Wonder. I still have never watched that movie. And there was the what was the Christian
Night of
Bale
Cups.
one? Yeah, those all came out so fast. I don't know. Is he making up for lost time for not making movies for 20 years? I thought his Hidden Place one, I think it's World War II, was another good one. Maybe it's World War One. I can't remember. That was a good movie. Same shit, but
Yeah.
maybe like more focused, because it literally had like a single character that it was following. He's like, what if I did Thin Red Line, but cheaper with one person?
That was his pitch to the studios. And they're like, "Why should we let you make another movie?"
And this is also another movie, too, that I think that a lot of people that have been in the military or veterans, maybe that's just the fact that they love all war movies, but most of them I don't think could stomach a Terrence Malick movie, except this one. They're like, "Oh, that movie was so good. He shows it how it is. It was hyper violent." I would just say it was realistic. I don't know about hyper violent.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It is one of the more thoughtful war movies, I guess you would say. Doesn't necessarily get into too much into the specifics. It's one main main area of battle. It's not
The
a
gist
huge
is it's not
epic.
important. Like
Yeah,
that's the whole thing is like this is a very unimportant victory. It's like a victory on paper only. It
but they
doesn't
just have to
matter.
have it. Yeah, they just have to have it.
Yeah.
I would say going back to we were talking earlier about what are some other good war movies. Speaking of
Yeah.
war movies that take place in this area, that I think do an even better job at getting into the mindset of the Japanese would be Clint Eastwood. His pair of films, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. Those are both.
Yeah,
That's
I
another good
that's
like pair to put together from like two sides of the same conflict.
great experiment too, to be like this movie's this perspective, this movie's the same exact battle, but from the other perspective.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Gonna miss Clint Eastwood if he ever goes away.
Boy, I read something earlier. I think he was talking about, which again he keeps saying this, but I think he did say again, like I think this might be my final movie that he's working on right now.
I think he's just saying that because he's 94. I know this is like a tangent, but he made a movie called Juror Number Two, and it's like not getting a wide release. He didn't show up for the red carpet event, and they were like, "Is it because he's too old?" They're like, "No, I think he was making a statement that he was mad about how it's being released for what's supposedly his final movie."
Yeah.
And I mean, the premise sounds really interesting for that, but I feel like unless some smaller studio comes in and woos him, like a Blumhouse or something, is just like, we'll give you $5 million to make something as your last movie, however you want, whatever you want. Although he makes them so fast that he either blows you out of the water or you do get some very you do get some very weird Clint Eastwood stuff. He's also very much interested in war, and I feel like something that the films of the 40s and stuff that you brought up, because that you have to be the American hero, you have to make the other people villains. And very much so, like, I'm not saying there wasn't nationalists in Japan in World War II. There absolutely were. You know that there were a ton of people that were there fighting that didn't fucking want to be there and didn't believe in the cause. They're
That
not
was our
they
last movie.
I know, and
Godzilla as a
Americans.
character of who was like, I don't think I should die for this war. Like, I don't think that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, and like there's some shots of the Japanese too, where like the one guy's like crying over his dead brother, and then they're very much people, because you do have like those shots of some of them fight, some of them are like fighting hard, some of them are lackluster, and some are just like down on their hands and knees begging. Like, I mean, you don't know what they're saying, but they're asking to live. Yeah, it depends on, I guess, the soldier or whoever they're dealing with. I'm surprised more grenades didn't, this is my dumb comment, roll down the hills when they threw them, since they were basically fighting, literally fighting an uphill battle. Yeah. I've watched this movie, maybe this is probably the third time that I've watched this movie, and I think just because of the style, it's probably the one that gets the strongest emotion out of me, but also is like the hardest for me to remember what has transpired in this movie.
Yeah.
So like I always forget about that shit. Like let alone people being in this movie, let alone big named actors being in the movie. It's not an actors movie. It is probably the most ensemble cast of all. It's probably more of an ensemble movie than Black Hawk Down. Even.
I don't know if it's been a little while since you watched it. When you watch that, there's so many people in that movie. There's too many in that. There's almost too many people in that film. That may be its biggest failing. Is there? It's another one where there's so many people in the cast that you start to lose track of who's where and who's doing what. But it is a little more focused on the story of the actual battle itself. So it's definitely not as much of a, sort of in the opposite direction of a Terrence Malick film. Ridley Scott definitely goes more for just getting straight into the action of it. It's one of those films where it is war sucks because it's just garbage. Like, it's not fun to be there. Like, you're constantly getting shot at 24/7. It's not a good time.
And it does feel like a war movie as opposed to something like in that same kind of era. I think of Jarhead, which Jarhead was like it's not just a pointless war, but we're also going out and don't have anything to do. Like, we're not even
we're just
battle.
driving. Yeah, we're just getting driven insane by sitting around with nothing to do all day. Like, we have nothing to distract ourselves with, so we start like blowing each other up and hurting each other.
Right, and that's the thing with the genre of war, it's not always necessarily the actual battle. I mean, a lot of them end up being there's a lot of, like, post-war movies. You think of, First Blood, it's just like, how would war affect this person? And, it never affects people well.
You know,
That's
yeah.
yeah, like you said,
Inglorious
maybe in the
Bastards is a good war movie that's not super focused on the overall war itself. It's very much just these individual people and how they kind of interact and are all somehow keep getting pulled into each other's orbit.
it kinda has that '40s feel, though, where you said they kinda make them like these unrealistic, heroes.
Yeah.
You know, like when you get to the end and he's scalping Christoph Waltz and he's like, "You'll be killed for this." He's like,
I'll get yelled at. I've been yelled
yeah,
at
they'll yell
before.
at me at the most." I'm not
Yeah.
gonna they're not really gonna do anything about it,
Yeah. They don't care that much.
which is probably a pretty realistic statement. I also liked it's a small part in Thin Red Line, but I did like whenever they first attacked the Japanese bunkers and really started overtaking it, and the characters were like stealing random things like souvenir.
Oh yeah, yeah.
My grandfather had some stuff that's in the family from World War II that he brought back with him. My grandfather didn't kill anybody. He didn't even see war like anything depicted in this. But I just think it's crazy because like it's borderline something you see with like serial killers and keeping trophies.
Yeah.
They get more dramatic with like you talked about Inglorious Bastards, where they were like keeping the scalps and shit off of their enemy, or weird shit like that. People like I'm collecting teeth or collecting ears or something.
Yeah.
Even though it
Which
doesn't seem
you
as
get
bad.
you get that scene later where that one guy like gets freaked out because he like has all that stuff, and then like it's very much like a delayed reaction. Like in the moment he was like completely okay with it, but then later he realizes, which I feel like it is another thing of there's a lot of people that they have that family member, like whether it was a father or grandfather, it's like, oh yeah, they didn't like to talk about the war, and yeah, they probably had all those things from the war, and it's like you don't realize it till they pass away that like you're like, this guy's got a whole trunk full of like stuff that he stole from like, yeah, Japan or Germany or something like that, and it's like, oh, he never told us about this. It's like, yeah, probably because he got it back home, and then like months later was like, I feel bad about that, and I'm just gonna like hide it in my attic for forever and never talk about it again.
I mean, even like another side note of theft, Japan had mostly all their like classic historic samurai swords stolen and shipped all over the world, mostly by Americans after World War II. That's why there's like a sword ban. So if you ever go over there, you can buy swords, which I'm sure they're not made by like Hattori Hanzo, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you're not getting that shit. But when you get to customs, they won't let you take that with you. So don't buy swords when you're over there. You won't get them. But yeah, like historically, a lot of the museums and stuff, they don't even have the swords anymore because they were taken. There's a small line about the samurai swords in this movie. But yeah, I don't know. That weird, like, we take over, we take what we want. Malick doesn't really touch on it too much, but I wouldn't say that he didn't have time. It wasn't his focus.
Yeah.
Well, we know how this is going. And then we went chronologically with, for our war movies, the order that they were released.
Not the order. I know. I didn't think about it till later. I was like, I probably should have like done them in like order of
War.
like, the war, like when it happened. I was
Yeah.
like, well, too late. We already started with this one, so we'll just go the way we've been going.
Yeah, so we're doing Black Hawk Down next week, and then we will be doing All Quiet on the Western Front, the German newer one from 2 years ago. Which, did you see that movie yet?
I didn't. I never got around to watching the
Okay.
new one.
Well,
So
it was
that'll
a hell
be
of
a
a lot.
first time for me on that one.
Hell of a lot better than what I was expecting it to be. And I might also be like, it might be the score a little bit too. It's got like a really great score.
I was glad you picked it because it was one that I just never got around to watching. So I was like, oh good, I'll finally watch it. I will say I feel definitely watch this movie loud. Might turn the volume down for Black Hawk Down because that movie is insanely loud. That is more leaning towards the Saving Private Ryan level of, oh my God, this sounds like an active war zone happening. If you turn the volume up a little too loud, it's a bit much.
Right, you might have the police called on you.
Yeah, people will be like, what the hell is happening? It's like the scene from Home Alone. I can scare off the pizza delivery guy by turning on Black Hawk Down. I think there's a
the
drug
modern
deal
day
going
one.
down
The kids watching that very old movie Black Hawk Down.
Yeah, that'd be when they remake it. That's the film he puts on.
And your boy Josh Hartnett, he's kind of having a comeback now. He was in Oppenheimer and then Trap. Hopefully Trap doesn't like ruin his career, but I think he's an interesting enough actor that as bad of a movie as Trap is, you still are sort of like, you're still rooting for Josh Hartnett as an actor to keep making stuff.
I don't. Yeah, I think he was one that I don't know. Yeah, he was. I don't ever think he was a bad actor. Like any of the movies that he was in, that people were like, "Oh, that movie was terrible." I'm like, but was it Josh Hartnett that made the movie terrible, or was it just a bad movie that he?
I mean,
happened
sometimes
to be
Josh
in?
Hartnett made the movies way better. Like,
Yeah,
the Faculty is really cool because of him. I mean, they love to
he's
make fun of
great
his
in
hair.
that.
He has very bad hair in that, and
No, it's his hair's not as bad as that. I think it's worse in H2O.
well, Halloween. It's like his hair's like the same terrible
It's
hair.
around the same time frame. Yeah, but
And just for context, growing up in that time, I don't know anybody that had that hair. I don't think that was a good representation of any hairstyle that anybody was wearing. And that's just literally what some hair and makeup person was like. That's what, hair person, obviously. The makeup person had nothing to do with that.
Yeah, so I think I'm interested to talk about that movie because I do enjoy it, and like I said, it is a great example of just a lot of before they were famous or just as they were getting famous, like Orlando
Or it made him
Bloom
famous.
pops up, Tom Hardy, I think that was like one of his earliest roles. He's in that. There's so many random people. I think I might be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure he's in it. I think Nikolai Coster-Waldau might be in that film. I think that might be one of his earliest films before he did Game of Thrones.
Probably, like,
I think he's one of the random soldiers.
That's a good example of, I haven't rewatched that movie since watching Game of Thrones. So that does tend to happen a lot too, where you'll see an actor and you're like, holy fuck. You know, or you go back to your old TV shows like Seinfeld, like there's a lot of huge people in that show with like no role at all. Just like walk in, do something dumb and leave.
Yeah, I like you're saying you haven't watched it since Game of Thrones, and I'm just looking. I just googled the cast list. There's going to be so many people that you're going to be like, oh, that guy was in it.
There were people like for this movie. I didn't look up who was that actor that played Bell. Was he in anything? Because I honestly
did look him up, and I did not. I thought I recognized him as somebody else than who it actually was.
You know who I thought he was, but I was wrong. I thought he was the guy that played Zach Morris.
I didn't think that. I thought he was the person that I thought he was for some reason was Jesse Bradford.
Yeah. He does.
That's who I thought it was for the longest time, and then I saw his name in the credits, and I was like, that wasn't who that was. He's a British actor, so I think he's done more stuff there, but I didn't recognize most of the other things that were listed for him.
Yeah, Jesse Bradford too is like, this guy looked a little bit older.
Yeah, that's what I kept thinking. I was like, I feel like he'd be too young to be in this film because he would have been this age in more the mid 2000s. He was in like Bring It On and stuff like that. Like the movies that I know I've seen him in. I was like, nah, I feel like he'd be too young. Like I kept thinking about that. I was like, no, I don't think it is.
It was making me laugh because Steph said her one coworker loves Jared Leto and was like, do you know how old he is? And Steph's like, I don't know, in his 50s. And she's like, yeah, I thought he was much younger. This is a younger person.
Yeah.
And because he's being fucking weird and trying to dress and act like a child when he's like in his 40s and 50s.
He's still trying to be young. He's young at heart.
He's young at heart. He's young in spirit. It's just funny to me because it's like, I wouldn't say that he's aged poorly at all. He's popped up in a lot of those movies in like the late 90s, early 2000s. What makes a Jared Leto breakout role? Because he's kind of the main character of Requiem for a Dream, but I mean, that didn't really get him a lot more roles. Maybe Panic Room it got him, or Fight Club.
I think Fight Club. Yeah. I feel like Fight Club's probably the movie that most people knew him from first.
He's barely even in that fucking movie. He just shows up and he's a soldier, and then he has
a pretty memorable part.
Yeah,
he has a memorable. He's another one. It's another one of those roles where he has like a memorable part for not really doing anything major, because like you always
maybe it's
remember
his weird ass
highlights.
Highlights. Yeah, but we know his most memorable movie is Morbius. Yeah. I haven't even seen it, but I know it. It's too memorable. I can't forget about Morbius.
You couldn't handle it.
I don't know. Maybe we'll end up talking about Morbius. Maybe enough time has passed that I could watch Morbius.
We'll get there.
Say, you know what? That was a bad movie, but it didn't bother me because I didn't have to watch 5 billion trailers for it. Favorite performance in this? I feel like we're wrapping it up, but I want to know: is there one that stands out to you?
I think Elias Koteas has a pretty good performance. I mean, he's a character actor. This might be his like biggest most main role that he's ever had in a movie. Because any other movie he's in, he's always like the side character, or he gets maybe like 5 minutes of screen time. This feels like this was the film that I can think of that he had the largest role to actually play, and he plays like a really good character.
I would argue for Crash, but then like beyond that,
Yeah,
he's just such a small character, and like I know I joked and called him Casey Jones earlier, but he's probably more prominent as Casey Jones than some of the Turtles in the first Ninja Turtles movie because they didn't want to show the Turtles off as much as they could.
yeah.
So they're like, we got to show off some
He's
people, and I don't even remember the person that plays April O'Neil. So
he's definitely, I think, I feel like he's one of those guys that I would think of as almost like kind of like wonder like how he doesn't get more, or like I don't even say like more, because I think he acts a lot. Like you'll see him in so many movies because he's a character actor, but never feels like he got like any sort of major role. Like I said, I feel like this is his
no,
largest role of really a lot of movies. He's good in Zodiac. I love his character in Zodiac as
great in Zodiac.
the one chief of the one police station that's trying to help out Robert Graysmith.
I think in the kill, yeah, he was great in that. He's like, he was the guy that was like, I can't give you that, as he gives him that.
Yeah, I can't let you know that there's something in our files that you should probably read.
Yeah,
I can't let you know that.
but there's no way that I can't not permit you to be in there.
Yeah,
He pops up and he's always great. I feel like he was in Killing or something too, like take a show or something that's kind of subpar and he'll
yeah.
elevate it. So he's definitely good in that aspect. I won't ramble on anymore. I think we've pretty much covered everything to a degree of everything in the Thin Red Line. So we're going to move on to Ridley Scott. And I'm more interested about Ridley Scott now because I'm thinking like he's like in his 80s and he's pushing out movies like crazy. Like I'm going to go
I was
see
about to say,
Gladiator 2.
that's what I thought you were about to bring up, that we're getting close to Gladiator 2 releasing.
Well, dude, I thought like he's iffy. The Last Duel I thought was really good, but there was something else. What was his last movie he did?
Um,
Oh, Napoleon.
yeah,
Napoleon was one that's like it wasn't good, but there were some moments in there that were so great. And I think that Apple put out like the 4-hour version, and I'm very tempted to watch the 4-hour version of Napoleon. He's kind of does this thing with like Napoleon. He does it with Joaquin Phoenix in Napoleon, and he's clearly doing it with Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2, where he just like he does not care whatsoever about trying to make
historical
realistic
accuracy, or
no accents or anything.
He's like, I liked how you talked in Training Day. Did you do that voice again? Like,
Well, Denzel Washington said, I could have done like a typical African accent, but I would have sounded like a stereotype. So I just used my own voice, my regular voice. So this month, obviously, a rewatch of Gladiator. I got to watch some Gladiator 2,
so you'll be in
which
full
I don't
on,
even know if I should say this, but I saw a Joker Fully Ado with Jeremy and his girlfriend, and there was a trailer for Gladiator 2. She leaned over and was like, it has Paul Mescal in it. And Jeremy's like, oh. And it was just so funny to me because I'm like, I don't think Jeremy knows who the fuck that is.
who that is, yeah.
Second, I don't even know how what is she into that she's watching all these Paul Mescal films? Like, I've seen him in a few things, but he's not like a huge name. He probably will be after Gladiator 2, because you know all the kids want to see Gladiator 2.
Yeah. Ridley Scott's setting himself up for another
Failure.
We'll see how Gladiator 2 does, and then he's going to be like, these young kids that don't want to watch, 2.5-hour movies about ancient Rome anymore.
Well, I mean, the trailer looks fucking cool, because they're like, what if in the Colosseum we filled it up with water and had boats and sharks? And you're like, what if we had a rhino in it? We're like, okay, fine, Ridley Scott, we're going to watch the fucking movie. But it is interesting because it's coming out against Wicked Part 1. I don't understand why they don't want to ever call anything Part 1. They don't want to deter the audience for a to be continued. But if that's like a 2.5-hour movie, that means combined Wicked is going to be like a 5-6 hour musical. I don't know who wants that. I personally am interested in what the story would be, but I watched that trailer and I'm like, I don't know if I could sit that long and watch that movie. I need to watch it at home where I can stop it and take some breathers. But Gladiator 2, sign me up. Yep, I'm there. I think it's a 2-hour even movie, so perfect. Chuck's just shaking his head now.
Mm.
We'll get into him next week. See you all there. Thanks for listening. Bye.
We are Cinema d'Amore. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter to stay up to date with news and information on upcoming episodes. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, Pandora, Alexa, or iHeartRadio. It would be greatly appreciated if you subscribe to our podcast on your platform of choice. We also appreciate feedback, so rate us, review us, and let us know what you think. And above all else, thank you for listening.